Right. Also, just to throw more stuff at us, Krishnamurti is here again today with me, and I think he's also going to pop in to say hello to some others as well. So keep an eye out for him. Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah. Be easier if they just tell us. Yeah, through you can do it in a number of ways, but it's mostly through your intuition because intuition is communication from high mind to low mind. We've got a lesson on intuition next week, actually. But it's from your high mind to low mind, basically. So any number of ways that can happen is kind of the answer. But in practical terms, you can get it through visions, you can get it through actual language, you can actually get words through and know what the message is, and you can also talk to them directly as well. If you see them, you don't even have to see them. Actually, you can talk to them telepathically in your head. That's a high mind to high mind telepathy. But then your high mind, puts it into the lower mind so that you can actually hear the conversation. You can also meet them in the astral and have a conversation in the astral as well. So there's quite a few different ways. One very common way, which is probably the way it usually starts out, is through the nervous system as well. So now you dowse, don't you? So that's a type of intuition that comes through the nervous system. But there's all sorts of other ways of communicating through the nervous system, like getting the shivers or getting tingles somewhere, or things like that. When that sort of thing first started with me, I remember I would get tingles right in between the eyes when they would communicate, and it would start with a yes no type conversation, and it would be like a little tingle in the eyes for yes. So it can start off like that, but then it progresses as your intuition develops. Yeah. 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 I mean, you can talk to them out loud, but and they might be able to hear you. If they're in the ground zone, they can hear you. And also that might be getting translated to an astral plane that you're talking to them in that you're not aware of. But the tricky bit is then getting the response, isn't it? Yeah. Well, we got a lesson on intuition next week, so we can talk about that. Right then, let's crack on then. So this week we are going to be talking about energy healing because, of course, this course is about healing, and Network Healers is a mixture of self-healing and energy healing. So we've got 5 lessons on energy healing specifically in this fast track course, which is just a fast track, remember, so we're going to expand it to a 3-year degree course eventually, so there'll be more, we'll be adding more in as the years. So yeah, 5 lessons in total on energy healing. There's going to be 3 theory lessons and 2 practical lessons. And the 2 practical lessons are teaching the Aya golden energy healing system. But the 3 theory ones is going to be a bit like basic, intermediate, advanced, a little bit like that format. So this particular lesson is the basics of what energy healing is. So let's talk about energy healing. So energy healing is a part of many different ancient cultures and traditions and religions and spiritual philosophies. Now, there's lots of ancient therapies that you're all aware of course, or aware of most of them, that use the subtle bioenergy fields of the body. There's lots and lots and lots of what a lot of people would call complementary and alternative medicines these days. But these are ancient forms of healing that exist in many different cultures, and arguably perhaps all cultures, because it's a human thing. Now, energy healing, when we use the term energy healing, we tend to think more of quite a subset of those therapies, which involve a transfer of energy between 2 people. And here we're talking about things like Reiki, things like therapeutic touch, healing touch, pranic healing, that sort of stuff. There's lots of different systems that exist out there. And, there's one in the UK as well that UK healers use, or Baha system. There's loads of, and there's probably millions of different types or thousands of different types out there in the world. So that's what people generally mean when they use the term energy healing. But there's a lot more to it than that as well. And in this lesson, we're going to talk about what energy healing actually is and the best ways to start learning it on yourself, because you can practice it on yourself as well as give energy healing to other people. So let's start with that question. What is it? What is energy healing? There's a lot of confusion out there, I would say, in terms of the general public in understanding what energy healing is. I mean, quite a lot of people might have heard of the term energy healing. Some people have never heard of the term energy healing. A lot of people would have heard of the term Reiki, of course, because that's quite a popular form of energy healing. And Reiki and other forms of energy healing are now creeping into the mainstream. So that's a good thing. You know, like the NHS, for example, you can get prescribed sessions of Reiki on the NHS. And healers are now these days, able to go in and work in hospitals. So, you know, things are changing gradually. But it's nowhere near it should be. We want the whole of the mainstream to be able to benefit from some of these techniques. I'll talk about that later on when we talk about our research project. So what is it? Let's clarify exactly what it is. So it's an ancient medicine, of course. Now, we would like to suggest a theory about what it actually is and where it came from. Now, we think that it actually evolved as part of our own evolution, our own biology. And we think that it evolved as a way of sharing healing between individuals in a group. And we think that it's happening naturally to everyone all the time. We think that connections are made between people through what we call chakra cords, which we talked about before in the collective mind, and energy connections between people, which energy is being transferred all the time. And we think that that evolved millions and millions of years ago in early animals, when animals started to live in social groups, as a way of sharing healing energy between individuals in the group. So if there was a sick individual, sick animal in the group, or an injured animal in the group, then healing from the rest of the group would naturally go to that individual to help them heal. The use of the body's natural healing mechanisms with conscious intent. Now, it's pretty well known in energy healing circles already, or it's a common thing to say that it is part of the body's natural healing mechanisms already, or it enhances the body's natural healing mechanisms. That's a very popular phrase in these circles. Energy healing itself, when we're actually using it, we're hijacking that system and we're using it with conscious intent. And we also think that that evolved as a survival adaptation in animals as well. We'll talk about that. Now, many people have a spiritual and magical type of understanding when it comes to energy healing. And it's evolved in our popular culture and mythology as a very spiritual thing. And many people like that side of it. And that's perfectly all right. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. But we would like to go a little bit further, not to replace the spiritual and magical understanding of it, but to add the detail of what it actually is, to understand it even more. And to understand it even more, we have to understand the biology of it, the mechanics of it, how it functions, and we want to give it a clinical understanding, because that's the way that we get these things into the mainstream, into mainstream healthcare, into mainstream medicine. And then the most amount of people can actually benefit from these techniques. So I want to be clear here. We don't want to remove or replace the spiritual and magical understanding. And because some people like that approach and don't want to know how it works. I've encountered many people who actually would rather not know how it works. They don't need to know. They know it works, and that's fine for them. And that's absolutely fine. But to apply it to the most amount of people, we need to understand it and find evidence for it and get it into the mainstream. Now, that's what our research project is going to be about. We'll talk about that later on. So we actually think that this is actually the future of medicine. The bioenergy fields within our body, and actually the possibility of manipulating them and transferring them between people, is the future of medicine. When medicine or healthcare or science finds evidence for all our bioenergy anatomy, for example, it's going to revolutionize the field of healthcare, revolutionise the field of medicine. Through understanding, of course, and we need evidence for this as well. We need to give evidence that the sector in general I'm talking about needs to give evidence to the mainstream for its existence. That's how we get things into mainstream healthcare, allopathic medicine. It's an evidence-based system, of course. So let's go a little bit deeper into what energy healing actually is. So this is a phrase I used in an earlier slide, the body's natural healing mechanisms. So let's have a little look at the body's natural healing mechanisms and give some examples of how this healing energy is actually part of our own natural biology. And the example that we're going to use is actually going to be wound healing, because it's a fairly easy example and all the stages of wound healing is very well known already. But this is just an example. Energy healing applies to everything in the body. Any type of healing that needs to happen in the body, it applies. So we're just using this as a little example. So it's very well known already that these particular things are necessary for a good recovery, a good healing in the body. Sleep, oxygen, nutrients, and blood flow. This is very simplified as well. I'm not going to go into this in massive detail. It's just an example. Now, these are the stages of wound repair or wound healing. Hemostasis. This is when the blood, let's say we're just talking about a cut in the skin, and which is bleeding and needs to heal. So hemostasis is just when the blood starts to clot. It needs to block the flow of blood so you don't lose too much blood. So the clotting starts to actually seal the wound. The second stage is inflammation. This is when the immune system gets involved and we disinfect the wound. So the immune system destroys infections, and also it dilates blood vessels so that it increases blood flow to the area. It's preparing the wound for regeneration. The next one is proliferation. This is when healing actually starts. This is when cells start to rebuild. New cells start to grow, blood vessels start to grow. And the remodeling phase is when those new cells get strengthened and reorganized. And this is when, let's say, scar tissue will actually form. So these are the 4 stages of wound healing. Again, remember, we're just going to be very simple here to see where healing energy can fit in. So in the first 2 stages, the immune system is involved, specifically white blood cells. White blood cells are very much involved in immunity, but they're also involved in repair or initiating the cell repair systems. These are 2 examples of white blood cells, lymphocytes and macrophages. Don't worry about those words. I'm putting them in here because we're going to be talking about them later on in the research projects. 2 examples of white blood cells. Now, in the proliferation phase and the remodeling phase, there is cellular regrowth. Now, very important type of cell involved in cellular regrowth is stem cells. Stem cells are types of cells that can divide and multiply and turn into any other type of cell, or some types of stem cells can actually turn into any type of cell. You know, a good example here is actually when an embryo is growing and it just starts from a ball of cells. They're all stem cells, and they can actually turn into any cell of the body that turns into a human being. Now, there's different types of stem cells, and some stem cells can't turn into any type of cell. But in wound repair, stem cells will be activated, and that's what will regenerate the tissues. Now, white blood cells are actually involved in activating stem cells. So it's these 3, out of all this, these 3 particular words that I want to hang on to here, because this is going to be part of our research projects. So where does healing energy fit into all this? Now, when you look at healing energy, and you can see healing energy in here if you train yourself to. You can see energy in your own body. You can see energy moving through space to other people. If you use your intuitive sight and look really closely at healing energy and zoom right in, your high mind should allow you to actually zoom right in to see the structure of it. What you see is something that we call magnetic enzymes, healing magnetic enzymes. That is healing energy, healing magnetic enzymes. Now, the word enzyme is a word which is already used in biology. So all the wound healing stuff on the last slide, that is part of mainstream science, of course. Now, healing energy is not part of mainstream science, as you're all aware. Let's just state that for the record, though. Healing energy is not part of mainstream science because it's made of subtle energy. And that hasn't been really discovered yet in terms of mainstream science. Now, healing magnetic enzymes, the word enzyme is a biological word that's already used in biology. And it means a facilitator of a reaction. A biological enzyme is a molecule which facilitates other reactions. It brings molecules together and allows them to react together to form other molecules. That's the word enzyme. And that's why we've used the word enzyme here, because healing energy works a little bit like that. But there are magnetic enzymes. We're calling them magnetic enzymes because it's made of subtle energy. So whenever I refer to healing magnetic enzymes, I'm actually referring to healing energy. Now, that we think that these magnetic enzymes work with white blood cells and stem cells in the healing process. We think that it's an integral part of the body's healing mechanisms. It just hasn't been discovered yet. There's lots of processes in the body which science knows to a certain level, but has not gone beyond that. So there's lots of areas in the body that is completely unknown to science yet. We think that healing energy is part of that. And we think that these healing magnetic enzymes have roles and jobs all around the body, not just healing, in fact, that's integral into all aspects and systems of the body. And when science catches up with this or finds the evidence for this, it will probably sit in the field of quantum biology. Quantum biology is a new field of study in science, which deals with the very, very small. And, structures in magnetic fields will probably sit within that field. So what do magnetic enzymes look like? Now, you can do this experiment yourself, trying to see what healing energy looks like and see what you come up with. You'll have to excuse my comical diagram, but this is roughly what it looks like. It's long strips of magnetic fields, basically. Very long strips of magnetic fields with programming on them. And the programming is different on each side of the magnetic enzyme. So, for example, there is a rough side. There is a rough side with lots of different three-dimensional structures on. And we think that this is how the magnetic enzymes grabs onto things. A bit like biological enzymes, which are made in a particular structure which lock into other molecules. They call it the key and lock method, how molecules can latch onto each other. We think that this is what the rough side is like in the magnetic enzyme. It latches onto things. And then there is a smooth side. If you turn it over and look on the other side, there's a smooth side. And the smooth side is where the programming is held. Now, on this diagram, I've used little geometric patterns as the programming, because we think that the programming is held within what some people would call sacred geometry patterns. Because malleable magnetic energy, if you remember, we talked about malleable magnetic energy a few lessons ago. This is what these energy frameworks in our bodies are made of. This is how magnetic fields arranges itself into structures through malleable magnetic energy. Well, we think that programming is actually all these different sacred geometry patterns. So the smooth side is a set of instructions, or some might call an algorithm, which gives the magnetic enzyme a purpose and instructions. So the magnetic enzyme needs to be sent somewhere in the body. It needs a set of instructions. It needs to know what to do when it gets there. So this is what the programming on the smooth side does. And we'll talk about it later, but this is how we can actually use this with conscious intent. We can program them ourselves. get to that. Now, there's a few different types of magnetic enzymes that we have identified already. Now, it's most likely that there are hundreds or even thousands of types of magnetic enzymes in the body naturally, doing all sorts of stuff. This is just an example. We've identified a few different types already, which are important to healing. And it's very important, by the way, for healers to understand this in great detail because it makes the healing better. I'll talk about that later on as well. So first of all, constructive enzymes, constructive magnetic enzymes. This is if you're building something. So if you're trying to regenerate tissue, for example. Hi, Sharon. You got some strong energy. Is Krishnamurti with you? Yeah, I think he is. Yeah. He wants you to say it. And it feels like there's a balloon pressed against your face sometimes, doesn't it? Yeah. It is. You do feel it like that when they're very, very close to you. Yeah. When they're really close, you can feel it, the pressure on your skin. Yeah. And sometimes it can be very overwhelming. So sometimes you can actually ask them just to move away slightly. I mean, with Krishnamurti, he knows exactly what he's doing. But sometimes you get other entities, people in between incarnations that are not quite so experienced. And sometimes they don't even know that they are causing you some uncomfort. Sometimes they're so close, and this may be the first time that they've realized it. So you have to kind of let them know that they're a bit too close. Can you just move away slightly because the energy is a bit overwhelming? It's all fun and games, isn't it? I don't know. Well, you can leave your mind blank sometimes and see if there's a message that comes in. But maybe he's just doing the rounds and introducing himself, and gradually over this course, it'll probably turn into something, and it might even turn into the introduction of the whole of the avatar team, the human avatars. But that's another story. All right then, so constructive enzymes. This is the type of healing energy that you send if you're trying to build something. If you're trying to regenerate tissue, for example, and wound healing is a perfect example, but there's many different instances that you might want to regenerate tissue. So that's magnetic enzymes that go in and help rebuilding cells. And by the way, we think that this is part of normal cellular regrowth anyway. It just hasn't been discovered yet. So you're just enhancing the process that happens already. Next one is deconstructive magnetic enzymes. As the name suggests, this is if you want to deconstruct something. So for example, a tumor. If you want to send healing energy to remove a tumor, it's very well known that energy healing can have very beneficial impacts on removing tumors. Now, we think that the efficiency of that healing energy is directly proportional to the knowledge of the healer and the intention process of the healer, which is supplying the programming to that healing energy. So there's different layers of intention and different layers of programming. We'll talk about that in a second, though. So deconstructive magnetic enzymes send to go and deconstruct something. Modifying enzymes. As the name suggests, again, if you want to modify something, and here's a good example of that is DNA strands. Now we've talked about DNA quite a bit already, and we've talked about epigenetics. Epigenetics is the switching on and off of genes, but we're not talking about that here. We're talking about actually modifying the DNA strand itself. A good example here is my mother who has had mitochondrial disease all her life, and we've worked, or she has as well. Together, we've all worked on her DNA, on actually removing the mutations in her mitochondrial DNA that caused the problem. Now, we think that it's actually changed the DNA now because her mitochondrial disease symptoms have disappeared. Now, she still has problems with her eyes because that's a knock-on effect of the mitochondrial disease, and we're still working on that. But in terms of the actual symptoms of the disease itself, they seem to have disappeared, and she just needs to go and get a DNA test now. We might find out that it's actually changed the DNA because she has a DNA test from before. So a modifying magnetic enzyme will actually go to the DNA strand and grab hold of it and actually make modifications, remove errors and reinsert segments. Now, there is a process in the body that actually does that. already in matter, in molecules as well. So it's probably connected to that process. But anyway, it's another story. So the next one, the last one for the moment, is regulatory enzymes. Now these enzymes go and regulate stuff in the body, and a good example here is epigenetics, switching genes on and off. And quite often we can use regulatory enzymes to actually activate a cellular process. Say we want to increase the amount of hormone, some hormone, let's say the hormone that increases or decreases hunger. I think it's ghrelin, I think, isn't it? Is that right, Sally? Say we want to increase or decrease ghrelin, we can actually use regulatory enzymes to go and switch genes on and off in the cell, which then affects the output of the cell that produces the hormone. So that's a few different types of magnetic enzyme. Now, these magnetic enzymes are programmed with an organ that we've talked about already. Now, do you remember in the lesson about karma, we talked about the karma emotion engine, and there was an organ in the lower mind called the guna. And in the context of the karma emotion engine, it produces emotional energy and circulates that around the body. It programs emotional energy. Well, it's a programming organ, and it produces all sorts of different types of energy that fly around the body and do different things. And in this case, it can produce healing energy. So the guna takes energy from the lower mind circulation system, which it's got that from the energy body, which gets it from outside. Golden energy comes in through the chakras, remember, and then into the energy body. Now the guna takes these separated frequencies of energy and cuts it into strips, and then adds the programming, and then sends it back into the body to do a healing job or regulation. Okay, so before we move on from that section, let's just have another look at some of these things that are needed for good healing, because some of this stuff actually gets a little bit missed in energy healing. And let's start with what the cell needs for healing. If we're talking about cells, let's say using the example of wound healing and building cells. Nutrients, of course, it's very well known that nutrition is very important for healing. The cell needs the building blocks to start with, to build new cells. So what we eat and drink is very important to our healing process. Now, in energy healing, general energy healing circles, certainly from what I've seen, this seems to get missed a little bit. You know, if you go for a energy healing session with somebody, whether it's Reiki or anything else, you don't tend to talk about nutrition much, do you? You go for a session and then that's it. And it does it's very beneficial, of course. But, you know, if somebody's going long term and trying to affect a certain issue, then their nutrition is actually super important for their healing process. So we want to develop this. We want to develop a nutritional element to our energy healing. Now, we have nutrition as part of self-healing anyway, of course. So anyone who is in our system will benefit from our instructions on self-healing, because nutrition is a massive part of that, of course. But this is additional to that. If somebody is receiving energy healing, we want them to have a balanced diet for general health and well-being. But if we're doing something specifically with energy healing, we want to make sure that they're eating the right things that benefit that particular healing. So we are currently developing a system of nutrition based on different types of energy healing. And the next one, oxygen. So it's very well known, of course, that oxygen is very important, not only for life, of course, but in healing. A good supply of oxygen. That's why the blood vessels dilate in the inflammation phase to allow as much blood flow possible. They actually constrict in the hemostasis phase, because we need to, in the hemostasis phase, need to clot the blood, stem the blood flow, so the blood vessels actually constrict during that phase. But in the inflammation phase, then they dilate again and to allow as much blood as possible, because the oxygen is coming in the blood. Now, Why do we need lots of oxygen? Because of the Krebs cycle. We've talked about the Krebs cycle before in the self-healing lesson. So the Krebs cycle is that reaction in every cell of the body, which is producing ATP energy, which powers the material body. So in the healing process, we need an extra supply of ATP. Well, we need lots of ATP going on in the material body in that area because we need a lot of energy for all that cellular regrowth. Now, if you remember from the bioenergy layer lesson, there is a part of the Krebs cycle which we think science doesn't know about yet. Of course, the Krebs cycle is part of mainstream science and medicine, has been for a long time. But do you remember talking about the meridian system and how we think that the Krebs cycle actually needs a constant supply of magnetic flux or subtle energy? That's why we breathe it in through our chakras and it goes into the meridian system, and the meridian system delivers it to every cell of the body because it's needed in the Krebs cycle. Now, that's not part of mainstream science. That's one of our theories that we need to find evidence for in our research projects, of course. But if somebody is going through the healing process, bearing this in mind, if we accept this, if somebody is going through the healing process, then if somebody is all blocked up chakras, blocked up meridian system, then they're going to have a reduced supply of this magnetic flux. Therefore, they're not going to be able to make enough ATP energy. And a perfect example here is people suffering from chronic fatigue, which is part of many different illnesses. So, as part of any energy healing process, we need to get people to unblock their chakras and meridian system back to the self-healing. But also we can do that through energy healing as well. So I think that also quite often gets missed out of energy healing practices or therapies. Okay, I'm going to move on to the energy body now. And got any questions so far? Yeah. You know, it's also interesting the use of hands as well, isn't it? And we actually think that the hands evolved as a tool for energy healing. Now, the hands have got chakras in them, in the middle of the palm, and so have the feet, but the hands have got chakras. Why have they got chakras there? Because in energy healing, we can, and we'll talk about this we'll talk about hands later in this lesson, but energy healing energy can actually come out of the hands. That's why in many therapies they use the hands. But you can imagine that evolved millions of years ago as a way of transferring energy healing. And that's probably why humans are such tactile animals, and other animal species that are very closely related to humans, like chimpanzees and all the great apes, really. Very tactile with the hands, but all about touching, isn't it? Maybe that is why the hands have evolved with chakras, because energy healing comes out of the hands whenever we touch each other. So let's crack on and talk about the energy body, and specifically the free flow system in the energy body, because this system is the one that deals with healing energy. Now, we've talked about the energy body a lot, of course, in this course so far. In the bioenergy layer, we went through various different systems in the energy body. So, you know about the chakra system, you know about the meridian system. So energy comes in through the chakras, gets delivered to the meridian system, which delivers subtle energy to all different cells of the body, in the material body. There's a Kundalini system in the energy body. There is a karmic system or a karmic grid. Now, there is also a free flow system. Now, this is the system where energy can flow anywhere around the body. And this is the system that healing energy uses to get around the body, basically. So let's look at this system a little bit so we can understand it, because taking control of this system is very important for energy healing. So let's trace the energy a little bit. So golden energy comes in from the outside, as you know, and it gets breathed in through our chakras. So it comes in through the chakra opening, and this is the solar plexus chakra, just used as an example here. So it comes in through the chakra opening, and the chakra filters out that particular color or frequency of energy. Now, the major chakras along the spine, they're different colors because they filter out, they process different frequencies of subtle energy. And we see those different frequencies as different colors. Now, so far, we've talked about energy coming in through the chakras and then getting delivered into the meridian system. The meridian system is a one-way a set of vessels which are just one way, which deliver energy throughout the body. But the free flow system is a bidirectional system. So it's big vessels. The meridian system has little vessels, fairly small vessels. The free flow system has quite large vessels, and basically just one running up and down the arm, and both arms, both legs, the spine. Yeah, but they're quite big, and energy can go in either direction. And the chakras deliver subtle energy to that system. Now here's a close-up of the free flow system vessel. And as you can see, inside there's smaller vessels, and this is where the separated frequencies actually run through. So they stay separated from the chakras, they stay separated throughout the free flow system. And this is very important when it comes to healing. Well, when it comes to anything in the body, to be honest, that uses subtle energy. Because different frequencies are used for different purposes. Now, if you have studied energy healing before, you probably know that different colors are already part of many systems of energy healing. For example, pranic healing uses different colors for different jobs in the body. It's all about visualizing what color comes out of your hands in pranic healing. But different, if you can imagine, different jobs in the body will need different types of healing energy, won't they? And different types of healing energy comes down to various things, and one of them is different frequency. So different types of programming will differentiate different types of healing energy, but also the base layer, the base level of energy also dictates a different type of healing energy. So I've always noticed, for example, that very dense things in the body, things like muscle tissue, bone tissue, cartilage, that sort of stuff, always needs red energy. And the reason is because red is the lowest frequency of those energies. It's going to be part of our job over the coming years as well, is to actually catalogue or make a list of different types of healing energies that are needed for different types of conditions and different types of jobs. So the free flow system is a system where energy can move freely about the body. Now there are, as I said, there's some big vessels going up and down the arms, up and down the legs, up and down the spine. There's also some storage systems in the free flow system. Now this is fairly well known as well. I've seen this in other systems of healing as well, the storage areas. And why have we got storage areas in there? Well, it's part of a sort of defense mechanism, you could say. Each chakra has got a closing mechanism on the front of it. Now, in our telepathy experiments, you'll remember that the first step was to open the brow chakra door. Well, there is a closing mechanism on all of the chakras which have an opening to the outside. There is a closing mechanism, and that's a protection thing. A bit like how your eyes have got eyelids, or the fact that you can close your mouth. In certain situations, you might want to close all the chakras. And when you close all the chakras, you need a supply of energy, a temporary supply of energy to actually use in the body. So I think that's why the storage areas actually exist. But you can actually use these storage areas for your own benefit when it comes to energy healing, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. But there is a big one. The biggest one is at the solar plexus area. Really big one there, and we use that one mostly. There's also one in the heart area. This one can be used for what we call heart bursts, giving people heart bursts sometimes, when you can actually focus all the energy there and then explode it out, and it can actually come out your arms and your hand chakras. And there's also one in the throat area as well. I'm not 100% sure why that is exactly, and we don't tend to use it much in energy healing. But it's there. So just to remind you that the guna is programming the healing energy. So we're breathing golden energy in from the outside. Our chakras are then processing each color and separating it out and then sending it around the energy body. It gets into the lower mind circulation system, and then the guna grabs hold of some of it, chooses the right frequency, cuts it into strips, and adds programming to it. We'll talk more about the programming aspect later on when we talk about intention. Everything that we've talked about so far is happening subconsciously, automatically. It's part of our body's natural healing mechanisms. Before I move on from this slide, I should also mention that we've talked about the lower mind guna, haven't we? Well, actually, there is also a higher mind guna. There's also a programming organ in the higher mind framework, energy framework. And we'll talk more about that in the next energy healing lesson. We won't talk about it more in this lesson. You can feel the free flow system. This is the system where you can actually feel energy movements in the body. Now, I'm sure most of you have felt this already. Some people don't though, so it doesn't really matter whether you felt it or not, but quite often you can feel energy sensations in the body. If your system is freed up of blockages, then you'll start to feel energy movements in the body. If somebody has completely blocked chakras, then quite often their meridian system will be a little bit blocked up as well. And the free flow system can be blocked up as well, because it can overflow from the chakras into the meridian system and also into the free flow system. So this system can be completely chocker with negative emotional energy sometimes, completely blocked up. And that's a problem because it reduces flow in the free flow system, which is very much linked to the immune system. But when we start moving energy around the body, you can start to actually feel it moving around your arms and legs and in other places as well. There's a little plate on top of the head as well, which you can sometimes feel lots of energy sensations on the scalp. In fact, one of the assignments for this lesson, there's 2 assignments for this lesson, they're both practical exercises. And one of them is to start actually doing these exercises to increase energy flow around the body, because it's very important for healers to have strong energy flow or clear, free energy flow around the body. Just as an aside here, you guys won't have a problem with this because you're all past the Kundalini phase of self-realization. So you're into the phases of self-realization. So as the Kundalini, I think I've said this before, but I'll just remind you, as the Kundalini energy K1 goes up through the major chakras, up through the spine. Once it's been through one of those chakras can't get blocked up again, ever. Which means that once you're past the Kundalini phase, then gradually all the other blockages that one might have in the energy body gradually just filter out and disappear. And that's the end of blockages. That's the end of emotional energy blockages for that person. So you guys won't have any blockages. But if we're teaching healing to people, then we should always teach. And we are going to have various courses on healing to teach the general public energy healing, because it's a very important skill for everybody to learn. You know, part of that course is going to be to clear your own energy body if you're attempting to actually give energy healing to other people. Now, so far we've just been talking about subconscious processes in the body, or natural healing mechanisms in the body that's happening all the time anyway. Now, but at the start, when we first started discussing what is energy healing, we talked about it in terms of using the body's natural healing mechanisms with conscious intent. That's what we generally think of when we talk about energy healing. So what do we mean by that? And how do we use, or how do we hijack this system and use it with conscious intent? Well, we do it through what is commonly called as the mind-body effect, the powerful effect that the mind can have on the body. So we can actually use the mind to program the healing energy. To add those layers of programming, we can use the mind consciously to do that. Now, we think that actually evolved is part of our biology millions of years ago. And how do we do that? We actually use intention, thoughts, because any intention is a thought process, isn't it? So we can use the mind to program healing energy with intention. Now, that's a very well-known thing already in energy healing circles, that it comes from intention. There's different levels of intention, which we'll talk about in a second. But can you imagine how this actually evolved? This probably evolved in the same way as the fact that energy healing evolved to share healing energy in a social group. Now, if it happens automatically, That's one thing. But can you imagine that it might have also evolved in a conscious way as well? So when an animal sees another, when an individual in the group sees another individual that is struggling, they start thinking about that individual. And it's that thought process, the intention process, which kicks off the energy healing. So you can see how that probably evolved into a conscious thoughts mechanism as well, which is why it exists already in our biology. So what types of intention can we add? Now there's 3 different types that we're going to suggest to start with. One is visualizations, because a visualization is a type of thought, and you can form an intention with a visualization. And I'll give you an example here, and this is related to the assignment, one of the assignments for this lesson. So first of all, you can visualize the energy in the body. So for example, you can gather energy in the solar plexus storage, and you can visualize that there. You can see that golden energy there, or whatever color you want to use. And we always use the breath, or let's say not everyone uses the breath, but it's a very good idea to use the breath when using energy healing, because when you're doing breathing exercises, you're activating the energy body. And I'll talk about that in a second. But on the in-breath, let's say, on a deep breathing exercise, on the in-breath, you gather that energy in the solar plexus storage and you visualize it. And then you can visualize that energy coming out of the storage area and down your arm. And here we're going to use the example of a sprained wrist or something like that. So you can visualize that energy moving around in your body. And then when the energy gets to your wrist, you can actually visualize the energy doing its job. You can if it's, for example, if it's pain, you can visualize it. You can use colors, for example. You can see it going from red to green or something like that. If it's healing in the body, you can visualize that energy actually manipulating the tissues to actually cause healing. That's what actually programs the energy. So that's an example of how visualization can be used as an intention process. Now there's another one. You can use mantra. Now a mantra, as you know, is a repeated word or phrase in the mind, whether it's spoken or whether it's in the mind. And you can actually use mantras to enhance the energy healing as well. For example, you can replace that end visualization when the energy gets to your wrist. You can or knee in this particular example. You can replace that visualization with a mantra. You can keep repeating the words: increase blood flow, rebuild cartilage, my knee is healed, or build muscle fibers. And that works as well as a layer of intention or layer of programming. And the third aspect is kinesthetic, using your kinesthetic senses. Now, kinesthetic just means location somewhere in the body. And there's a type of meditation called kinesthetic meditation. And that means putting your mind in the body. Now, this is going to be a part of the assignment for this lesson, part of the exercise that I talked about just a minute ago about increasing energy flow. Well, actually uses kinesthetic meditation as part of that exercise. You put your mind in your body and you move your focus around your body. And that actually moves energy around your body. But you have to actually feel those sensations in the body. So when you're in this particular example, if you can visualize the energy going into your solar plexus storage, but then put your focus in there. See if you can feel any sensations in that area of your body. And then you can, as you visualize the energy moving, you can actually, it takes a bit of practice doing this, but you can actually move that feeling in the body through the body. You can try and feel the inner body sensations inside as that energy or as your visualization moves. And then when the energy gets to your wrist, you put your mind, your focus in your wrist and feel the sensations in the wrist. That intensifies the energy that goes to that area. So we're going to do the assignment in a minute. I'm going to talk through the assignment in just a second. And this here is just to remind you that energy breathwork is so important to energy healing. Especially when we're teaching energy healing to people. It's very important in terms of for the healer to keep themselves clear of blockages. Talk about that in a second, but especially when you're about to do a bit of energy healing on yourself, we should always start with energy breath work because it charges up the energy body. And we can use the breath in terms of the moving the energy around the body. And here we would suggest using golden energy yogic breathing. So I think most of you are aware or have done golden energy yogic breathing before. If you haven't, basically I will link a video into the assignment as well, so you can just remind yourself of what this is. But basically, for the purpose of this conversation right now, this is just a deep breathing rhythm. It's I'll describe it very quickly, but it's using basic yogic breathing, which is on the in-breath, the belly comes out, then the chest comes out, and then you fill your lungs completely to the top with air. And then you hold your breath for about a count of two or three or so. And then you let all the air out in a long, slow, steady stream out to the bottom of the breath. And then you hold your breath again for another count of 2 or 3, and then repeat. So it's the counting is about, on the in-breath, count of about 4 or 5, and then hold for 2 or 3, out for 4 or 5, and then hold for 2 or 3. So it's a very, very easy, deep breathing rhythm with a little breath hold at the top and the bottom of the breath. And the golden energy bit is the visualization. So on the in-breath, you want to visualize golden energy pouring in from all directions. And then your whole energy body is filling up with golden energy on that in-breath. And you get to the top of the breath and you're completely full of golden energy. And then on the breath hold at the top of the breath, you expand it in all directions as if you're an exploding star or an exploding sun. And then on the out-breath, you're breathing out, so air is coming out of your lungs, but your energy body is holding that golden energy in. So you're not letting that energy out on the out breath. Your energy body is then full of clean, clear, bright golden energy. So that's roughly golden energy yogic breathing. I will link a full description to it in the assignment so you can remind yourself. But we should always do a few rounds of that before we do any self-healing on ourselves. So let's talk about the assignment, which I think I've misspelt. So moving on quickly. The assignment for this lesson, or one of the assignments for this lesson, is just an example of a self-healing, a energy self-healing exercise. So what we're calling this golden energy self-healing, and it's very similar to what I've been discussing already. It's moving energy around the body and trying to fix a problem in the material body. And we're going to use the example of a headache, just because most people get headaches now and then, so it's very easy to practice on a headache. But you can use whatever you want. If you've got a particular issue in the body, then you can use it for that. If you're having a hip replaced or anything like that, perhaps. So there's a few steps I want to take you through with this exercise. So step 1, energy breath work, always, because you want to charge up your body with fresh golden energy. Step 2, we want to gather the energy on the in-breath. So as you're breathing in the golden energy, your visualization and your kinesthetic senses need to be down in the solar plexus storage. So you can see that storage area getting larger and larger with that golden energy on the in-breath. And then on the out-breath, you're blowing the air out, but you're actually moving that energy up to the head area. And don't forget, we're using headache as an example. That's what the black thing there is, a headache. So on the out breath, you're visualizing that energy move up to your head, and let's pretend it's on the front of the head area. Next step is give it the instructions. So this has to happen on the breath hold at the top of the breath, and you're giving it the instructions there. And you can do whatever visualization you want, or a mantra. But if it's pain, I always tend to use colors. It's quite easy. You turn it from red to green or something like that, or whatever you want. You can actually visualize the tissues in the brain if you really want. I mean, it really doesn't matter. It's completely up to you what you use as a visualization. Or you can just repeat a mantra at the same time. So you want to be doing that as you've moved the energy there. So it's a very short period of time you're doing that for. It's just at the top of the breath. And hopefully, over a certain period of time, that will actually have an impact. But step 5 is to repeat, because you do that once and it's not going to do anything. It needs to be repeated constantly, like so many things. It needs to be repeated again and again and again and again. But what you'll find is that quite often, if it's a mild headache, it might be gone in 5 minutes. Just depends on what's causing the headache, most likely. But quite often this will work, but you have to constantly repeat. And that's another note about repeating, about energy healing in general terms, to be honest. When you go to a healer for an energy healing session, it will generally give some benefit. But I think that a lot of people are missing a trick about this, because I think it would have a lot more impact if people went every day. Unfortunately, it gets expensive because people charge for it and people can't do that. But it's a little change every time, and therefore it takes a lot of sessions to have a really massive impact. Sometimes you can go for one session and it has a big impact. That can happen. That has to do with higher mind healing. We'll talk about higher mind healing and the higher mind guna in later lessons, mind you. But if it's lower mind healing using the lower mind guna, then it's a repetitive thing. It can have some really big impacts, but it has to be done again and again and again and again, and it's quite time consuming, obviously. But if you're doing it on yourself, like in this example, then it's very easy to just do it again and again and again if you've got the time to sit down and do it. Yeah, breathing cycle. Yeah. So yeah, I'm talking about repeating the breathing cycle. So you do that little cycle every breath. So one breathing cycle is one: gather, move, visualize, breathe out. Breathe in, gather, move, visualize. So you're doing it on every breath. And if you spend, say, 10 minutes doing that, how many breaths you would have fitted in? I don't know, 20, 30 breaths or whatever. So yeah, that's what I mean, again and again and again. Having said that, the repeating thing does apply to your other example as well. If you're trying to fix a problem in the body, if you're trying to heal quicker from an operation or something like that, then it would absolutely benefit for you to be just constantly doing it. 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at lunchtime, 15 minutes in the evening. The more you do it, the more impact it's going to have. So this is in summary. And by the way, I've taken this chunk out of this PowerPoint and uploaded it as the assignment. So you'll have these instructions in Google Classroom in the assignment. So step 1, energy breath work. Do a bit of golden energy yogic breathing to charge up the energy body. Step 2, gather the energy in breath in the solar plexus storage. Step 3, move the energy to the place that you want it to do something in the body. Step 4, give it the instructions, visualize it doing its job or repeating a mantra. And step 5, repeat again and again. Okay, so moving on to energy healing, the energy body, because we've just been talking about the material body, haven't we? But there's all sorts of other stuff going on in our energy frameworks, and the energy body being a very good example. And there's lots of energy healing that can be done in the energy body. So here's an example, and you know about this already because you've done the bioenergy layer lesson, using the throat chakra as an example. The throat chakra can actually get blocked up. And when you see chakras and you train yourself to see chakras, it does look blocked like that. Now, a blocked chakra is going to do various things or have various impacts. They're emotion regulators, the 5 emotion chakras, the throat chakra being the highest emotion chakra. They regulate our emotions, and the throat chakra regulates characteristics in the personality to do with communication and self-expression. So a blocked chakra is going to cause imbalances in that personality. And a good example here is either an extroverted personality or an introverted personality. There's going to be some sort of imbalance, quite possibly. Now, we've also talked about the long-term impacts that a blockage can have in the chakra. It can actually cause knock-on effects in the material body, so it can actually cause ill health in the material body. For example, a throat chakra blockage, over a long period of time, we tend to see thyroid issues. But anyway, so a blockage is something we need to get rid of, and energy healing can fix that. Energy healing can fix that in ourselves, and energy healing can fix that in somebody else as well. So we need to unblock that chakra blockage and therefore balance the emotions to do with that chakra. And how do we do that? Well, in terms of self-healing, it's chakra breathing, isn't it? Now, interestingly, chakra breathing you think of as just a breathing exercise, which it is, but there's some energy healing going on in chakra breathing, because a lot of the chakra breathing, what makes it chakra breathing is actually a visualization. So in chakra breathing, you're doing that breathing, that natural deep breathing rhythm of basic yogic breathing that I just went through, but you're actually adding a visualization for each chakra. So on the in-breath, for example, on the in-breath, you're focused, and in this example, we're going to use the solar plexus, the yellow. So on the in-breath, you visualize that yellow energy going into the chakra, getting sucked into that solar plexus chakra, and fills up your whole body with yellow energy. And then on the out-breath, you're firing it back out of the chakra opening. So you're kind of like breathing through a chakra in the visualization. Now, when you visualize that, that is a form of energy healing that you're using on yourself, because your intention is to unblock the chakra. So you're actually programming healing energy, and it's going to do the job of unblocking the chakra. That's on top of the mechanical impact of the breath. We talked about that in the bioenergy layer, didn't we? The mechanical impact of the breathing cycle on the chakras. When we breathe deeply, the chakra spins, or it forces the chakra to spin. Therefore, it starts to break up those emotional energy blockages in the chakra. That's the mechanical impact of unblocking chakras with breath work. But the visualization adds a level of energy healing on top of it. That's why visualizations are so good to combine with breath work. Now, so far, we've just really been talking about energy healing in terms of doing it on ourselves. Self-energy healing. So we talked about what healing energy is. We talked about how it gets programmed in the body. We talked about the free flow system, how it travels around the body. And we've talked about how to hijack it with conscious intent and use it on ourselves. Well, now let's get to energy healing for others, which tends to be what people think of more often than not when you use the term energy healing. The transfer of energy from one person to another, the transfer of healing energy from one person to another. And there's various ways of transferring this healing energy from one person to another. Now, nothing changes in the programming. That's the interesting bit, or the useful bit, is whether you're using it on yourself or transferring it to somebody else. The process doesn't really change at all. The creation of it and the movement of it, there's no difference whatsoever with the healing energy if you're programming it to go somewhere in your own body, or whether it needs to come out of the chakras and go into somebody else's body. The process is exactly the same. So it's just the transfer methods that differ. So you can use your hands. This is a very popular method, of course. Reiki uses hands. Pranic healing uses hands. Therapeutic touch and healing hands uses hands. So it's a very popular method coming out of the hands. And you've got to visualize it coming out of the hands. But you don't have to use the hands. And you know, by the way, some therapies, you actually physically touch people. Some therapies are actually physical touch. And by the way, while I'm at it, massage, it's not generally thought of as energy healing, is it? But when somebody is giving somebody a massage, more often than not, there's probably some form of energy transfer going on through the hands. But anyway, some therapies use physical touch. Some therapies just hold hands a distance away from the body. But either way, that energy is going to be transferred through the hand chakra cord into somebody else's chakras. So you don't actually need to use your hands. You can actually just transfer the energy while you're in the room. Now, for want of calling it anything else, we're calling it in the room. And that's just when you're sat in the room with somebody and giving them energy healing. Now, this happens all the time, even unconsciously. For example, with counselors and psychotherapists that use talk therapy with people, this is probably happening naturally, the transfer between people. And as a healer, you can actually consciously give somebody energy healing that's just in the room. You don't actually need to use your hands at all. It comes out of the other major chakras. And now we get to distance healing. You can transfer this at a distance. And we talked about this a bit in the collective mind lesson, of course, and we did our telepathy experiment assignment. So you guys are aware of the possibility or how energy can be transferred from one person to another through the collective mind, through chakra cords. Now, this method, we use mostly this method in network healers. Now, hands healing is a big part of Aya as well. And hands healing can be used within network healers as well, if there is a close proximity between a recipient and a healer. But we don't want to be limited to certain locations, which is why we tend to use distance healing more than anything else in network healers, because we want it to be nationwide. We want it to be global, in fact. So that's why distance healing is a very useful thing to use as part of network healers. And we tend to think about energy healing in terms of sending energy from one person to another to fix a problem, don't we? To actually do a healing job. That's kind of what we've been talking about so far. But we shouldn't forget that emotional energy can be transferred as well. That's happening all the time naturally between people, but you can use that in a conscious way as well. You can send emotional energy to people. And that is a form of energy healing. And we use it, quite often in network healers. And a good example here is sending love, sending the emotion of love to somebody. Because quite often a recipient may well be going through some problems, whether it's medically or mental health or whatever it is, but quite often they're going to have blockages and emotional energy blockages. That means that they're feeling negative emotions a lot. That means that their energy body is full of negative emotional energy. Now, you can send emotional energy to people to replace that negative energy with positive energy, positive emotional energy, which will help or make that person feel better in the moment. If you can send love, the emotion of love to somebody, to push out all that negative energy and replace it with love, they're going to feel love and support. So that happens all the time in healing, and we use it a lot in network healers. So let's talk quickly about levels of intention, because there are many different levels of intention, and levels of intention correspond to levels of programming that you can add to the healing energy. So what's the most basic level of intention? Well, you need to first of all form the intention that you're going to send healing energy to somebody. That's the most basic, completely nondescript healing energy. That guna is going to be taking strips of golden energy and adding a base layer of programming on it and turning it into healing energy of some kind. But it's going to be very general. So that's the most basic form of intention. Every layer of intention that you can add on to that is going to increase the power or the efficiency of the healing. So if you can decide to use a particular color, that's going to help. If you can give it a location, that's going to help. If you can give it a person name and you know who it's going to, that is going to help. If you give it the instructions of where it needs to go in the body and what it needs to do in the body, then that's going to add another layer of programming. And the more detailed your intention process is, the better that healing energy is going to be. And that directly corresponds to your level of detail in your visualization or your mantra, which is why the more the healer knows about what that healing energy needs to do, the better the healing becomes. So levels of intention are very, very important. I think you've nailed it there, to be honest. So you've answered yourself absolutely correctly. And this is something that we tell people in self-healing as well, especially when it comes to chakra breathing, for example. What you actually see matters very little. It's the intention process that matters. So if you're trying to visualize a particular color, for example, if you're a person who doesn't respond that well to visualizations, and there's lots of people out there like that, then it doesn't actually matter. It's the intention of doing it that actually programs the energy. And that's the same with chakra breathing. Some people respond to different things. Like in chakra breathing, if somebody says, well, I don't tend to visualize very much, can't actually see anything. You can either carry on and do the intention and not care that you're not seeing anything, or you can switch to something else, like the kinesthetic feelings. For example, if you are not keen on visualizations in energy healing, you can use the mantra method instead. And it's just the same, basically. Yeah, absolutely, definitely a thing. It's the intention behind the thought. An intention is a thought process, but it's that what's actually doing the program. And telepathic information is also a type of energy with programming, by the way. So we talk about healing energy, we talk about emotional energy. Well, a telepathic message is another type of subtle energy with a type of programming on it. Great. So the energy is going through chakra cords. It's coming out of the healer's body, energy body, through chakra cords and into the recipient of healing. So this is why it is so important for the healer to be free of blockages. Now, you guys are past the Kundalini phase, so it doesn't matter anymore. You haven't got any blockages. And if you have got any residual tiny ones left over, then they'll be gone soon. It takes 6 months to a year to after the Kundalini phase, takes 6 months to a year to really get rid for all the residual blockages throughout the energy body to disappear. But it doesn't matter, they'll be gone soon. But if we're going to be teaching healing, energy healing to people, and we are going to be teaching energy healing to people, then it really needs to be part of our systems of healing. That the healer needs to be doing energy work on themselves to free themselves of blockages. Not only to allow the healing energy to get out of their energy body, but also, can you imagine if that healer is themselves feeling lots of negative emotions? Their energy body is going to be full of negative emotional energy. That gets transferred to the recipient along with healing energy. So it's very important that a healer is aware of that and prepares themselves to send healing. And we do that through energy breathwork exercises or energy work exercises. And that's one of the assignments for this lesson. We've got the self-healing one that we've just talked about. And if you go into the assignments, there's another one in there called energy work or free flow or something like that. And it's just for you guys to have a go at it, to see what it's like, see if you can start moving energy around the body and increasing the flow in the free flow system. The limit or the time frame for that is the whole course, though. So we're not going to ask for anything handed in this week. We're going to ask for something handed in at the end of this theory course, because we want you to do it a fair few times. It takes a bit of time to really get the hang of it. Okay, last couple of things really. The first one is the Aya Golden Energy Healing System. So there's going to be 2 lessons on our particular system of energy healing that we're going to teach. And the lessons will be later on in the course. But we're going to get this registered or accredited as a system of healing. We're going to start with the CNHC, register a new profession, a new healing profession in there, and eventually we're going to want to move that to conventional statutory regulation as well. So that is going to include lots of different our particular methods of healing, basically, including hands, including in the room, including distance healing, including lower mind healing, higher mind healing. And we'll talk about higher mind healing in the next lesson. And lastly, just to remind you that we are starting a research project, and this is the first project we're actually starting. Now, we have talked about the reincarnation project briefly. That's another project that will be coming slightly later than this one. This is the one we're actually going to start with, the Free Flow Healing Project. That has actually started already in a way. We started doing the research for it, and there's various things that we want to focus on in this project. For example, we want to find evidence at some point for the free flow system, of course. We want to find evidence for healing magnetic enzymes. The guna programming that programs that healing energy. And I haven't talked about this today, but we also think that mitochondria play a massive role in the healing energy in the body. We think that it's got a... Now we've talked about mitochondria quite a lot already, so they're very important little bits of kit. We think that it's involved in energy healing as well. We think it's got something to do with the activation process, the activation of the creation of healing energy naturally in the body. In the same way that mitochondria are involved with the epigenetic process of switching genes on and off, we think that it also activates or has a role in activating healing energy. But that's another story. That'll be part of our research project. Okay, there we go. Right, any questions? Any discussion points? Any discussions we want to go back to? Well, let's start with any questions specifically on the energy healing stuff that we've talked about today. Yeah, okay, great question. And there's loads of reasons why energy healing sometimes doesn't work, isn't there? And this is one of the things that makes it so very difficult to do a research project on it. This is one of the things that most healers throughout history have found, that it can be very inconsistent. And the reason, and trying to find evidence for something that can be inconsistent is very difficult. And there's reasons why it can be very inconsistent, isn't there? And you've just mentioned one. There could be, maybe we need to list these at some point of all the different reasons why sometimes it doesn't work. But the one you mentioned is a very good point. If there is a life plan in place from that higher mind in question, then sometimes the higher mind can actually block the healing or stop the healing. Or, a better way of saying that actually is that the higher mind connection between the healer and the recipient means that the higher mind stops the healing being sent anyway. So yes, sometimes it can not work because of that. Now there can be other... Sorry? Yeah, so there's other ways that it can be blocked though. So I think in those cases, we're talking about lower mind blocking. So when we're talking about the higher mind plan, that's one thing. But in many cases, the healing can be blocked by the lower mind and not necessarily the higher mind. And the lower mind can block it through psychological blocks. So if the lower mind there's various different ways this can happen. One way is that the ego can get attached to its medical condition, and subconsciously the ego doesn't want the healing. It doesn't want the condition to go away. Now that's not conscious. That's not that person thinking, I want this medical condition. That is the subconscious mechanisms of the ego attached to it and resisting it. Because the ego, that's how it builds its identity. So if it's built its identity around being a sufferer of that medical condition, quite often there's subconscious blocks which can actually block the healing off completely. Yes, that can happen if with a sleeping higher mind or a woken up higher mind. Absolutely, yeah. But that also might even be part of the life plan. So it can get pretty complex if you chuck it all together, can't it? Yeah, absolutely. And another way that sometimes that it doesn't work, if somebody is completely blocked up. If somebody is completely blocked up, then there's no way healing energy is going to get into their energy body. Right. Okay. Well, so in your particular case, your higher mind, you're going to be sending higher mind healing energy, not lower mind healing energy. We have to talk about that in the next lesson. And your higher mind is perfectly capable of making that energy get through any blockages. So you can actually start to find the real cause here, because first of all, your high mind could quite easily, basically what they do is the high mind will send a primer energy which unblocks, and it makes the way for the healing energy to get in. So your high mind could do that. So if it's not doing that, then it's another reason. So it could be many reasons. It could be the life plan thing. That person is burning karma through having those issues that's a possibility, for example. Yeah, absolutely. There's loads of stuff to do for somebody who is nearing the end of their life. Absolutely. Whether it's just a case of comfort or emotional energy, that's going to be massive in somebody who's nearing the end of their life. To remove the fear and be filled with love, for example. But then you've got to also treat the root cause of the fear. So then we're talking about the karma. So we can clear somebody's karma before they pass on, because that's going to really help them as they go through in between incarnations and into the next incarnation, if they can start with a clean slate. And of course, education. If somebody is ready for it or in a capable state to receive education, self-healing education, spiritual education, spiritual evolution, the whole, all that sort of education will always help somebody on their journey. Yeah, sometimes it comes on gradually and you don't realize it for a while, do you? And you suddenly realize what it is. Yeah. I wonder what this is going to turn into. That's very interesting that he keeps turning up during these particular lessons. So we'll find out at some point, but it might be it might build slowly. Whatever the reason is, it will build slowly. One thing I did want to say, actually, and we seem to have a few minutes to say it, was a point which I didn't mention earlier. Oh, yes, and that was to do with golden energy and the source of golden energy. Now, I mentioned earlier about doing breathwork exercises before doing energy healing because it charges the energy body up, right? And this is going to be part of our systems of healing energy healing that we want to teach people. Because when you do breathing exercises, you're charging up the energy body, you're bringing in clean, fresh, golden energy, you're replacing any sort of dirty, negative energy that's been there, residual stuff from during the day or whatever. Now, that is assuming that you get your golden energy through your chakras. Now, something slightly different happens when you go through self-realization, because all of your golden energy starts coming from the 9th chakra and starts coming down into the system. And through a period of time, you're using both. A period of time, you're using energy coming in through the chakras and also the 9th chakra as well. So there is a period where that it's using both. Eventually, the chakras will stop and it will all come from the 9th chakra. So that's just something to mention for you guys, because as you progress through self-realization, it's going to be less and less important for you to get energy coming in from the chakras, therefore using breath work, because it's all just going to flow in from the 9th chakra. And I want to also mention here a myth that exists in some forms of energy healing. There is a myth in some systems, I'm not going to name any, but in some systems, they assume that energy comes from above and flows through you. In fact, they may assume that it comes from a deity, perhaps, or just from the universe or whatever it is. But some systems will say that all you need to do is ask for the energy and it comes in from above and flows through you. Now, I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding going on here, because ultimately there's a grain of truth in there, because as you go through self-realization, or whenever the 9th chakra starts to activate and start sending through energy from the 9th chakra, then you can start to say that flow is coming in from the 9th chakra, and that makes sense. However, as we know, the Kundalini system has to grow. The Kundalini system grows over many incarnations, doesn't it? And you start off in your human journey, you start off without a Kundalini system. The higher mind has to actually grow it. So that idea that healing energy comes from above and comes through you doesn't necessarily apply all the time, because somebody may not have a Kundalini, a 9th chakra yet. So in that case, that person should be absolutely bringing in their energy through the chakras. And I think that this can cause depletions. This is a bit of a problem, I think, because this can cause people to be depleted. If they think that they have a completely unlimited flow of energy from above, then it means that all their energy is getting depleted from other sources, from their storage areas, from in their own body, and they're not replenishing it with breath work. So I think it's quite important for that to be known, I think, because I think more systems of energy healing should include breath work as a general rule. There we are. Any more questions, discussion points, any comments? Yeah, I totally agree. I think prayer is an ancient form of energy healing. Absolutely. And I think it can be improved greatly by the detail and the level of intention. But the basic idea of praying for somebody else, for the benefit of somebody else, I think is a layer of intention, which is part of our natural biological healing mechanisms. And yeah, I think that you're absolutely right that in some faiths, like in Christianity and in fact, some people call it faith healing, don't they? But I think you're absolutely right that a group of a community can actually intensify the healing process just through the power of prayer. Yeah. I think that all those studies that have been done, and I think that all that reinforces the idea that it's a natural healing mechanism in social groups. I think that it reinforces that idea. All right, and well, the next lesson on healing, whenever that will be on non-intention healing. So we've talked about intention healing here, haven't we? The programming energy with the intention process of the lower mind. Now, there is another type of healing called non-intention healing, which works in a completely different way, and that is controlled by the higher mind. So we're going to talk all about higher mind healing and non-intention healing in the next lesson. Because network healers, we tend to focus on non-intention healing more than intention healing. But that's for another day. Our next lesson next week, however, will be about intuition, the intuitive process.